With the number of patches remaining ever decreasing, the hype of the DLC waning, and minimal community engagement from the developers, Elden Ring is facing its longest shadow: end of life. Before the big sleep, myself and many other content creators are asking for a number of changes, with most centered around the multiplayer. You may have seen my video asking FromSoftware to patch the Taunter's Tongue, making it act like the dried finger of Dark Souls by expanding the player count. You may have seen my video advocating for a better arena, suggesting level brackets and more robust maps and incentives. With patch 113 released earlier this week, I was disappointed but not surprised when no such changes were made. Fortunately, there are still more patches, more opportunities to implement these very, very important changes. And it's those future changes I want to talk about today. What if they don't fix it? What if the remaining patches are nothing more than small adjustments and balancing tweaks? It's certainly possible. In fact, I'd say it's extremely likely. FromSoftware have shown a frustrating indifference to the multiplayer community so far that has caused many to abandon the game. Sure, they added separate balancing for PvP and PvE, and they did add the Colosseums for dedicated PvP, but I want to point out something I feel is increasingly obvious about those additions. They were not added for the benefit of PvP players. They were added for the benefit of everyone else. Now that might sound counterintuitive. You might think I've finally snapped. Maybe I've suffered a head injury from how far I fell when the DLC answered exactly none of my prayers. But I assure you, I am of sound, if not irritated, mind. My argument is simple. Take a look at what they changed with those updates. Separate PvP and PvE balancing addresses a common complaint in the community, that PvPers want balance changes for overpowered or otherwise unsuitable gear in PvP, gear that PvE players like using. Rather than annoy PvE players who want their powerful toys to remain powerful by rebalancing their favorite easy modes, a more elegant solution is to simply only change the weapons for PvP. This keeps PvEers happy, and the relatively unimportant desires of the comparably small PvP scene are nigh meaningless in the face of the very large, somewhat casual audience that does not partake. Of course, the change does have merit for PvPers. Separate balancing for PvP and PvE is a perfectly reasonable idea when they are not built to the same standards. But the fact remains that splitting the balance seems to cater more to the PvE side rather than the PvP side. And for different reasons, the same is true of the Colosseum update. But how could an update exclusively centered around PvP be to the benefit of PvE players? Well, it's a cage. A place for PvPers to go to fight each other and leave everyone else alone. If I had $1 for every comment someone left on one of my videos telling me some variation of "go to the arena" whenever I talk about invasions, I could afford to bribe someone at FromSoftware to make the changes I need. But seriously, it's a very common complaint. PvE players, specifically cooperators, hate invaders. Not universally, mind you, they are not a monolith, but with remarkable consistency, they hate us. They want someplace to draw invaders away so they can just play with their friends. Someplace to distract the vile plague that is invasion. We've already seen Elden Ring shy away from invasions as a core mechanic, relegating them to an opt-in feature centered around cooperation. The fact that it still isn't good enough for many players should speak volumes about the expectations the developers are faced with. There is clear demand to reduce invasions. And the Colosseum is a place for would-be invaders to get matches against other would-be invaders. Of course, invaders understand that the Colosseum is no true replacement, and not all PvP is the same. Invading is a mechanic that embraces what makes Souls multiplayer unique. It throws PvP into the mix against players who would otherwise not engage. It forces something on cooperators in a way no other game does, and it's better for it. Plenty of players do not like invasions, and they're entitled to dislike them. No one likes losing. But invasions have merit because they make the game different. They give it an identity, and one centered around the delicate balance of player agency, no less. So for players who dislike or even outright despise invasions, the idea that invaders should be locked away in an arena where they can fight each other like rabid dogs, however misguided, makes a lot of sense. You want nothing to do with them, so throw them away. And invaders who just want to fight are more than happy to try the Colosseum. They'll go where the action is. But there is no action in the Colosseum. It lacks the nuance and chaos of an invasion. It's a match, not a hunt. So it should be no surprise to anyone who understands that simple division that the Colosseum is for duelists and the overworld is for invaders. But we should remember something I asserted about FromSoftware in a previous video. FromSoftware are not invaders. They do not understand. Now, that assertion is not one I can back up with any direct evidence. It is something I can only feel and believe, given the games they make and how they make them. I am confident Miyazaki does not invade, as he has gone on record stating he plays very little of his games once released and requires excessive help to complete them. Not exactly the makings of a typical invader. And it makes sense. Invading is a lifestyle. It's a brand. It's a way of playing the game that makes every other aspect of the game secondary. It changes the way you see the game entirely. So when they try to make these supposed PvP-focused patches, I see it as an attempt to appease non-PvPers, a shot at giving mainline invaders a designated place to get out of everyone else's way. By providing a dedicated PvP zone, they can separate the player base and protect the anti-invasion crowd. The priority remains with the PvE players because that's who FromSoftware is. Like any good developer, they make games they want to play, and they do not want to PvP. Because if invasions, or PvP in general, were a priority for FromSoftware, it would be apparent. They would make adjustments not only to weapon balance or inconsistencies, they would make serious, palpable changes. Changes like a 6-player limit or a fully functional arena. Changes like covenants and rewards for multiplayer. Changes that experienced, knowledgeable, passionate players have been asking for years. Things that would actually encourage people to engage with those systems. But those aren't the changes we've gotten. I'd hesitate to call them changes at all. They're really nothing more than adjustments, and small ones at that. Many members of the community, myself included, staked all hopes on the DLC, a paid expansion that could add anything into the game. Anything that would suddenly change everything about the multiplayer experience and make everyone happy. But the DLC arrived and did not bear the gifts for which we asked. Some new toys, sure, but no new ways to play with them. And as is true of all toys, we will tire of them in short order, because it is the games that make toys fun. So, in light of all this, I want to pose the question to you, dear viewer. You, as someone who has pinned hopes and expectations on a game that has essentially ignored any external advice regarding anything multiplayer. What happens if they don't fix anything? I don't know. The simplest answer is, we wait. We wait for another game that maybe gets it right, or at least improves the approach. It's not glamorous, but it could be all we have. A more complicated answer is community efforts. Seamless Co-op has received high praise for its addition of PvP and expanded player count, so I think there could be something there. Then again, that does nothing to help anyone not on PC, and community efforts like this are rarely substitutes for an official experience. Some players do not want to mod their game or deal with the quirks of unsanctioned play. It's just the reality of the situation. There is, of course, the possibility of other developers stepping up, as many have attempted to do, but until I see a developer who not only understands and properly implements every single aspect of what makes a Souls game great, but can improve on the multiplayer experience in a meaningful way, I remain extremely skeptical. And the hardest answer is, it may not matter what we do. We are unimportant in the grand scheme of the gaming industry. We buy the game and we play it, same as anyone. FromSoftware may not hate us, but they are so far deaf to our cries. But I am not yet ready to admit defeat. I am not willing to give up on the only series that holds my interest. FromSoftware can make the changes needed, and it would be to their benefit. Nothing I have proposed would harm the PvE community in any way, and if anything, would only bolster their experience. A larger player count in the overworld would benefit any player who has 3 friends. A more robust arena would actually have a chance at reducing invasions of casual co-opers, as serious PvPers who are more interested in competitive play would actually have a functional outlet. These are good, reasonable ideas that perfectly mesh with the template of Elden Ring, and to deny their implementation would be an act of sheer indifference. But I believe in FromSoftware, even where we differ. They are a good developer with strong reasoning. If they can give me a good reason to not implement these changes, then I'll resign myself to wishful thinking. But otherwise, if there is no good reason not to, I can accept nothing less than a return to form and an improvement of the wholly unique system they have built over 15 years. So please, FromSoftware, please, Miyazaki, listen to your players. All of your players. We love the game and we want to keep playing. Just give us the tools to make it work. That's all for this video. I'm leaving a link in the description for you to submit feedback to Bandai Namco and request game-specific changes. I don't necessarily want to bombard them, but it's paramount we are not ignored. These people work hard and have a lot on their plate at any given time, so we can't let multiplayer priorities fall to the floor. We need to represent ourselves as a community and show that their efforts would not be wasted. If you're a content creator, please get in on this discussion. I know a few are already working on content specifically centered around multiplayer adjustments, but we need as many people as possible to make noise. And if you're just someone who wants to show support, leave a comment and like this video and videos like it. Maybe share them around if you can. Anything that boosts YouTube engagement helps tremendously with visibility and spreads the message further. We're only getting so many patches, and with each day, we get closer to that end of life. Let's make sure it goes out on a high note. Thank you for watching.